Hola, mi gente. Welcome to episode 4 of Objections. Here is my partner in debate, Frank Gooden. Welcome to episode 4. Is that me?
That's me.
You
I,
just violated.
sorry. I just screwed it up.
So here's my partner in debate, Frank Gooden from Talk with Frank Gooden. As you know, we started this new segment called Objections, and it is a debate show. Sometimes it gets hot and heavy. We welcome our viewers to come in and object to either myself or to Frank. Today's subject is going to be hashtag MeToo, and we're going to talk about some stuff. I know you've heard the word coined and thrown around, but we're going to talk some facts today about the movement that you probably didn't know. And if you did know and you know more than me, feel free to object. Frank, would you like to say hello to the gente?
Hey, so glad to be here, everybody. Continuing this thing that we're doing together with Objections, offering you the heated debate, offering you the points of view that you can use to hopefully help you and enlighten you. And if not, you bring those points of view to help and enlighten us. So glad to be here.
Correct. Because I'm always right.
And I'm always right.
Frank is always right. So maybe you guys
are always right.
Maybe you guys are always right. You can share that with us. Hey, Patrice, good to see you again. Everybody, welcome. All right, so let's get right to it. You know how I like to do, get right to it. Hashtag MeToo. We've heard it over and over again. We've heard about who coined the phrase, who started it. So let's throw out a little facts before we start dissecting. Hashtag MeToo was first coined by Tarana Burke, which is a Black woman, okay? MeToo was not started by Rose McGowan and Alyssa Milano, even though people debate that back and forth. The very first woman who ever coined hashtag MeToo on MySpace in 2006 was Tarana Burke. Fast forward to 2017, after the Harvey Weinstein case hit the presses, Alyssa Milano said, hey, if everyone who's been sexually harassed or assaulted just hashtags MeToo, then we would all have this group going of support, right? Now, that's why there's a debate who started it at first. Was it Alyssa? Was it Tarana? I say Tarana. If she did it in 2006 on MySpace, my vote is on Tarana Burke, right? But Tarana Burke is welcoming to everyone who's using the hashtag because it's helping victims of sexual assault and sexual harassment, right? But Tarana Burke stresses that she is specifically concentrating on marginalized communities, right? So that's not Hollywood. That's not Alyssa Milano and Rose McGowan, right? That's us, you and I. And that is what she's concentrating on. She also stresses that it's not just women who get sexually harassed and molested and sexually assaulted, but men also do too. You guys have probably seen Terry Crews came out as a MeToo participant when he says a Hollywood exec grabbed him by the genitals at a party. So men have also joined the MeToo movement. Before I begin on how deep MeToo has gotten, Frank, do you have any opinions on MeToo at all? What you think about it? Or are you kind of like, I don't know what this is? How do you feel about MeToo? What do you know about it?
Gotcha. I actually ran across the same research that you did. You probably knew all this before the research, but I had to kind of go in and get into the history of it. And 100% on point. And really, I don't have anything to offer in terms of the history and even your characterization of it being something that is needed, that's deserved. And when we get into it, maybe we can chop it up on some things, but agreed, 100%. In terms of the person who created it, that needs to be acknowledged, who first kind of thought up with it. But it definitely has grown much beyond sort of in terms of the impact, where it was back in 2006. When Tarana Burke, right? And she's an activist. She was a social activist, just not just some random who did, but yeah, so I'm with you 100%. We track it.
Yeah, she's a survivor and she's boots on the ground. She's in Congress. She's trying to pass bills and laws, and she's trying to change laws with non-disclosure agreements, vetting teachers in schools. So she's boots on the ground. She's in there. She's not just at a Hollywood Oscar party saying, hey, let's do X, Y, and Z. And I'm not knocking the women that have done that. I'm just saying between the two, you know what I mean? They have more of a privilege to get attention. So we can't forget that this movement was started by a Black woman for marginalized communities, right? And I think it got lost. Some people say it got hijacked. But we have to make sure that we continue to use hashtag #MeToo in that vein, right? Because we're the ones that are marginalized, right? So I want to get into how big this has grown. And I did my research as well, and I was shocked, right, at some of these laws and bills that are in place. So it says Tarana Burke is in Congress right now with the MeToo movement. And she's down for a law which would remove, and this is probably going to shock a lot of you, right? But this is the government, which would the American government. Okay, so Tarana Burke is in full support of the Congress bill, which would remove the requirement that staffers of the federal government go through months of, and I quote, cooling off before being able to file a complaint against a congressman. This is true. This is actually happening. So if you work for Congress or you work for the government, you, man or woman, you need a couple months of cooling off because that is the requirement before you file a complaint against a congressman. You gonna take that?
I mean, and you're saying that she's filing so that to remove that, correct? Because that's currently
to remove the requirement because it's absurd. Picture you get robbed, picture you get assaulted, and someone tells you, hey, there's a requirement on the books that says you have to cool off for a couple months and then come back later. So when you look at, you know, these laws and these bills that are in place, you have to look at where these laws coming from. Who started this? Now we're gonna get a little into race, and I know race gets sticky.
But you know what? Before you jump there, I do want to go ahead and just throw that right now. Like I'm assuming you're in agreement with it. I'm tracking with it. You know, just as a human being, I don't think that should be there either. If someone committed a crime against you, and see, here's the thing: when it comes to sexual offenses or just straight up I guess the R word, I'll put it that way. Because, and we're avoiding saying it because of the YouTube algorithms, guys. We don't want to get, you know, they go crazy when you have that word too many times. But because of the R word, that's an extremely serious, the FBI, I believe, sees that as the second most serious crime just behind murder. So imagine being in a situation where you have been a victim of that, and then you have 3-4 months of cooling off. That's not cool. So I'm tracking with that. That should not be there. Go ahead. I just want to jump that in.
I see Vaughn asks, what is the purpose of cooling off though? And that's the logical question, right? Because you're thinking common sense, you get assaulted, you get harassed, you go and file a complaint, right? So this is where I get into race, and it's going to get sticky, right? Our government, factually, not rumored, not I think, is disproportionately white male. Our government in the United States of America is disproportionately white male. Our Congress, disproportionately white male, right? So you have to think these are the men that have these laws in place. So how could you not decide for yourself, just using your logic and common sense, that these men want leeway for certain crimes for a certain reason? I would think, right? Because if I was in a position to make laws, to put bills in place, I'm going to want them in my favor, right? That's how most people think. Power corrupts. As much as we like to think that politicians are for the people, right? Power corrupts, especially when it's the old boys club, right? So it's a logical question. Why the cooling off period? You have to go to the top. right? So thankfully, Tarana Burke is all for killing the requirement of having a cool off period. I want to go into why Me Too is so controversial, and I want to dispel some myths, right? Unfortunately, because Me Too focused on men sexually harassing and sexually assaulting women, men automatically feel attacked because they're male, right? Because they're constantly hearing, well, men are doing this and men are doing this and men are doing this and men are doing this. And some men, not all, some men are now offended by the idea of Me Too. And I've literally seen some of them ask, well, I'm not going to compliment women anymore. Can you even be complimented anymore? Then what do you expect us to do on a date? We can't compliment you because everything is a Me Too situation. So now it's just snowballed into something that it never was, right? There's some men that are worried about being falsely accused. Hey guys, false accusations are only 2% to 10% out of 100. So think about that. 2% to 10% out of 100, okay, cases filed. So it's kind of hard for you to be at risk of that if it's just 2 to 10%. So I don't think you're likely to be at risk of being falsely accused. My advice would be to put yourself in any, crazy situations like you tell us to do, right? So what do you think about why men are so offended by the Me Too movement, Frank?
So I'm wondering about the receipts, because that's a real, that is absolutely one of the things that sort of our own men's mind when we talk about, quote unquote, getting Me Too. You're saying that out of filed cases, you're saying that wherever you see whatever that stat is, 2 to 10% are false.
False.
Like, false accusation. Where are you getting that from?
I researched it.
So I'm definitely.
And here's the thing: they said out of 100% of the cases that are filed in general, because they said most women don't even file or call the police after they've been sexually assaulted or harassed, because they don't want to face the humiliation, the public, bashing that goes on. So you're thinking, we're just talking about the cases that are filed. You know what I mean? Because there's so many things that go on with women, and they're like, I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to humiliate myself, my family. Maybe I feel like I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. So these are just the very few that are reported. But out of 100% of the cases that are filed, only 2 to 10% are false accusations.
Okay, so now I'm straight up multitasking because I'm looking up. I'm gonna as I go. So let's say that for now, because I'm going to be doing a whole lot of checking now on this one. But so I hear you. First of all, you just said that many true accusations are not reported or not filed. Okay, right. So I can feel you in that. That kind of makes sense, because we do live in a society where women are immediately ostracized, and they face some really negative consequences for coming up. And then, you have a whole lot, especially if it's the R word. Then that's real trauma that they have to go through in order to even step up and say it happened. And even when they do that, the outcomes aren't always good for them individually. So I'm tracking. I'm with you. Here's where I think most guys are. It's an issue because if it is a false accusation, I'm going to kind of throw out the statistic right now. But if it is a false accusation, it's so powerful. It has the ability to destroy a man's reputation. It has the ability to take away his livelihood. And so it forces men to be in a position where you have to take extra steps in order to inoculate yourself from any accusation, that could appear to be credible on its face, Incredible meaning, hey, you were in a room by yourself with somebody, and so they step out the room, and the female says, oh, he did this, he did that. It's only 2 people. That could appear credible, but lack actual merit. And so because of that, dudes who don't even have, aren't even thinking, because there definitely is a percentage of guys that are going to be cavalier about it and just do whatever. But the ones who don't have any inclination at all and, love, honor, respect, treat women how they should be treated, they don't want any part of this because it's so powerful. It can destroy you if it's a false accusation. Yeah. So is that, what do you think about that?
So I want to go back to, because I'm sorry I didn't have the note for you, but if you go to MeToo on Wikipedia, it's under media coverage. The second paragraph states false reports of sexual assault are very rare, but when they happen, they are put in the spotlight for the public to see. This can give the false impression that most reported sexual assaults are false. However, reports of sexual assault account for only, false reports of sexual assault account for only 2% to 10% of all reports. These figures do not take into account that the majority of victims do not report at all when they are assaulted or harassed. Just to give you the source of that.
Okay, nice. All right, so yeah, I'll be doing some digging, but appreciate the receipts. You're definitely doing your part.
Yes, I'm wrecked.
Okay.
Next time I'll make a note, so when you throw that at me, where you got that at? So, okay.
So that's the thing. Dudes are like on the defensive if against a false accusation.
Okay, I'm a bit cynical, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. I'm a bit cynical about that because I think that, again, you know me, I'm always about what's the biggest thing that's happening, right? We discussed this before with the police reform episode that we just had earlier on your channel. What's the biggest thing that's happening in mass, right? My attention automatically zeroes in on what's the biggest thing that happens. That's not to diminish that one man could be accused. There was a case of Brian Banks, the football player, who was accused by that woman his whole career out the window. Thankfully, now he's happily married. He has a child. He's moved on, but it ruined his football career. He went to jail and everything. So it is, you know what I mean? It is something that can stop your life. But I'm always, what's the biggest thing that's happening? Right now, we have 90% of reports being made by women and boys and men who are being sexually harassed or sexually assaulted. We have to deal with that first because it's so rare, even though it's detrimental and horrible for someone who gets falsely accused. But we have 90% of the population of reports. These are just people that report because a lot of people don't report. So I think you're more at risk of being sexually harassed or assaulted than you are of being falsely accused. Mm-hmm. So I tend to lean towards what's the biggest problem right now? Is the biggest problem right now this is happening at 90%? Or you were at a party you shouldn't have been with, got a little happy with a girl, now she's accusing you of something you didn't do. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of like, I guess.
That's an excellent point. So here's the thing on it. So yes, I think you're making a strong point for this is why Me Too is necessary. All right, because bottom line is this stuff does happen. According to the stats, it is when a woman takes the time to actually go in and report it, chances are she's telling the truth. So we need it. The thing is, just because this is new, and when you talk about this whole phenomenon, it's relatively new. We just talked about how the origins and how it really didn't take off until roughly 2017 when Milano, put the tweet out and now everybody's talking about Me Too. Cool, good, we need it, but it's early. So if anything, we need the Me Too movement needs to mature. We need to put more things in place that can help us with preventing the possibility of false accusations, even if right now they are considered to be small. If the range is 2 to 10%, whatever it is. It should be, because even, just like putting someone in jail who didn't commit murder for the rest of his life is something that we don't want to do in the justice system, and that's one too many. That's a failure in the justice system. Similarly, if one man's life is destroyed because of a false accusation of rape, of the R word, then we don't want that. That's also a travesty of justice. So we shouldn't be cavalier. I'm not saying that you are, or maybe I want to cause some drama and say that you are being cavalier, but we don't want to be cavalier about, oh, okay, let's just, even though it's a small percentage, let's just forget about it. They'll be all right. They'll, shake it off. You'll be all right. We don't want that type of mentality.
Right. I agree with you there. I don't think that anybody should have their lives ruined because of a false accusation. It's literally the worst thing that could happen to a man, because as you know, the R word is absolutely one of the most heinous crimes, I think. When you are violating someone's body, right? It's, to me, 100 times worse than you're taking my chain or my car or you're robbing my house, right? You're violating someone's body. So to me, that's the most heinous crime that can be committed to another human being, right? So I'm not saying
that's worse than murder.
I think it's worse than murder, because and here's why, right? People are like, yeah, here's why. Because the R word, you die a million times reliving it. Death is sudden. And again, I have my beliefs in my system, but to me, death is, you're no longer in any type of pain. No longer. You don't exist. You're gone. The ones who suffer from your death are your relatives, your family. You no longer suffer. But if you are sexually assaulted, you are scarred forever. You relive it. You have trauma. There's PTSD. It ruins your relationships with your children, with your new possible husband, with your boyfriend. It is forever. So you have a life sentence where your rapist may get out in 10 years.
Right?
So right, the artist. So to me, yes, it's more.
Okay, so you know what you're saying. If somebody does that to you, you're just telling them, go ahead and just kill me. Let's get it over with.
Well, I've always said you're going to have to do it while I'm dead, because I'm going to fight back so hard. You're going to have to kill me. You're going to have to.
You're saying, hey, when you do it, if you win, go ahead, ask me. I'm done. I don't want to, because that's worse.
Yeah, like it's crazy to think, but this is stuff that women got to think about. Hey, one day, if I'm getting sexually, I'm sorry if I'm triggering anybody who's been through anything really traumatic. I should have put the trigger warning out first. But this is something that women are continuously thinking about. What time should I get home? Where did I park the car? What should I wear today? These are things that go on in our daily lives, just looking in our closet in the morning. Right. Well, I'm going to be home late, so I can't X, Y, and Z. So yeah, I am that freaking hell bent on. You're going to have to kill me. You're going to have to kill me, because your eyes are going to be missing. Your tongue is going to be pulled out. This is not going to be easy for you. And you know what happens with force? Sometimes you end up dead or strangled to death. You know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of victims of sexual homicides, and what did they say? The battle wounds and the defense wounds were crazy. That woman fought for her life till the end. It happened. It's like, kill me.
No, and thanks for also bringing sobriety to the conversation, because I was just pushing you just to see how far it would go. Yeah. But at the same time, this is more than just an intellectual, academic back and forth here. This is something that can trigger people. So I feel you on that.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't going back to the men. No, I don't want to be I'm a little cynical, yes, but I'm not dismissive of this. Can ruin a false accusation, can ruin someone's life. But Me Too is hella necessary, because when you think about it, there's already a Me Too in place for men in our society. There's already a Me Too in place, and this is what it is. It's requirements like, if a man sexually assaults you, go take a couple months and cool off and come back, little lady. It's in when someone is falsely accused. When a man is accused, whether they did it or not, they have mobs of people that are saying he didn't do it. I liked him on that sitcom. He didn't do it. I like that ass album he dropped. He didn't do it. He scored 3 touchdowns last year. He didn't do it. So that men already have a support system, right? When they're accused, which is something that women don't have, which is why Me Too, right, was invented to begin with. It was meant to be a support system so women can come together and say, literally, me too. That happened to me too. Whereas when a man is accused, automatically, depending on where he is on the social status, right, he has mobs of supporters already. People that never met him, people that don't know him personally. If he made you laugh in a stand-up show before, he ain't do it. If he's your favorite football player, he ain't do it. If he dropped that hot, them hot bars and that last album, He ain't do it. So men already have a Me Too movement. That's why Me Too is necessary for women, because women didn't have that. Women would come out by themselves. Is this mic on? I'd like to say such and such sexually harass me. You whore! What were you wearing? What were you doing there? You're just trying to get a bag. You want to come up. So Me Too is very necessary in that way, but no, let's not diminish that false accusations can ruin lives. I agree with that.
Very necessary. I got you. I got you. You make your point eloquently.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. We may have an objection.
Uh-oh.
We may have an objection backstage. Hey, what's up, big time drum? Welcome, Mike.
Hi.
Hey.
Hey, what's going on, dude?
Mm-hmm.
It's good to see you again. So, do you have an objection? Let me get the clock.
My objection is going to be the same as yesterday by saying Me Too is necessary, but without prejudice. And let me explain. So, Me Too is necessary, and here's why I say without prejudice, because I think the Me Too needs to be revised, because the problem with Me Too, from the both points that you've made, is that it's protection on one end, or that's the premise of it. But the problem with the protection is that it's not protecting the innocent. That's the problem with it. Okay? So that's why it needs to be revised, because we're at an age where, if you feel some kind of way, Jen, and you say, you know, a man sexually assaulted me, if I could say that, then guess what's going to happen? The law is quickly going to take your side and say, okay, we need to take down this person, and then ask questions later, which basically is wrong, because remember, everybody is innocent until proven guilty. Okay? So, for that matter, that's why I feel it needs to be revised. You know, does it, is it a perfect system? No, it's not. Is it necessary? Yes, provided it can be, provided it, the movement can uh, be used in a way that it's not being taken advantage. And I think that's really the bigger issue right now with the Me Too movement, is that it's being taken advantage rather than it's being used in a way where something really has happened.
Okay, so just thank you for that objection. But just to be clear, you're saying that Me Too should be revised to include the protection of men who are falsely accused.
Correct.
Okay, and also it's being abused. How so?
Okay, so just like I explained earlier, that if you felt some, okay, let's just say you went out with a guy, right? And things get hot and heavy, okay? But for whatever the reason, you decide to change your mind, right? And he's feeling like, man, you're a tease, you're this, you're whatever. He puts his hands on you, right? But not in a way where he's abusing you. He just has his hands on you, and because he has his hands on you, you cry the R word, and because you cry the R word, and because the law takes that very seriously, they're going to take him down simply because you said that. Okay, and so for that guy, that's unfair, because he's like, well, wait a minute, that's not what happened. But by the time that gets figured out and sorted out, you know he's already been processed, and that's where it's unfair. You see what I'm saying? Even to some cases where you know it's not just he gets processed, he has to wait till he actually goes to court. You see?
Yeah.
To be able to say, I've been innocent all this time. But the problem is, The time that he spent while being locked up and all the other jazz that he has to go through, he can't get that back. You know, so that's my point with it, right?
Yeah, yeah, and you're making the same point I made earlier. You're just going into detail about it.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so Frank, do you want me to respond to that, or do you?
Yeah, I think he's objecting to that's
Okay.
an objection with you.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because there's we have to start teaching, right? Men don't think like women, and women don't think like men. Woo, right? Newsflash, right? There's a very, very thin line. There's a very, very thin line when you consider consent, right? And I noticed that you stated, "Hey, we're in the car. It's hot and heavy." I changed my mind. And
Right.
you put your hand, or in general, a man puts his hand on a woman, not in a violating way in his mind. I'm not violating you at all, right? The thin line is that she may feel violated, and you can't measure, right, someone's fear, or someone feeling attacked, or someone feeling mistreated by your scale, right? And I want to bring up, this may be sensitive to some people, but I want to bring up, I wish I had it in front of me, Kobe Bryant's letter, right, to his sexual assault accuser. A lot of people need to read that letter, and I wish it was something that they made public yet again after the whole Gayle King scandal. Because if you see the way Kobe Bryant handled, right, his accuser, he wrote in the letter, "What I did, right, wasn't intended to harm, but I understand that you feel it harmed you, and I can't take that away from you. I can't take away that you feel harmed. I just went home, took a shower, and got in bed. You went home and were destroyed mentally," right? That's how he addressed it. And I think it was such a beautiful way to address when you violated somebody, although by your terms, hey, I didn't rip her clothes off, so it couldn't possibly be the R word. You know what I mean? I didn't punch her in the face, so it couldn't be the R word. And there's a thin line, and I talk about this a lot with my family and with my friends, that when in doubt, don't. Right?
But can I just add something to what you're saying?
Okay, hold on 1 second. Yes,
Sorry.
absolutely.
Yeah. I just want to, sorry. I just want to add something to what you're saying, because this is very important, right? It's one thing to write that letter because basically you're showing sympathy towards somebody's feelings. You're not admitting I actually did it. You know what I mean? So in other words, it's like saying to someone, "I'm sorry that you felt that way, and I wish, it didn't come to that." But it does not mean that I'm ultimately saying I did something. It's no different than if you break up with a guy that you've been with however long it is, and let's just say, some time has passed and you two are, cordial with each other. And he says to you, "Look, for what it's worth, I just want to say I'm sorry." Not that you are going to get back, not that, it's going to make it any better, but he's just showing sympathy to you to say, "Look, I'm sorry that it came down to this." That's all.
Okay. I think that's a little different. I think that's a little different than actually when you're talking about sexual assault. And no, did Kobe's letter say I argue? You know what I mean? We can't use the word.
Right.
But Kobe's letter say no, I argue? Absolutely not. But he apologized for what he did that night that caused, right, that whole assault,
he's showing sympathy,
accusation, and all of that. And I really wish that more men would read that letter. I really wish more men would read that letter. If you're listening, read that letter. But I think it's an education thing, because we're not, I would hope, men and women are not enemies. We're still teaching each other how to love each other, how to get along, right?
Yeah.
So, speak to I advise, speak to the women in your family. You will be shocked. Sit with your mother, your sister. And this is not the, what if it happened to your mother? I'm not doing that. I am
Right.
not
Right.
doing that because that goes in one and out the other, right? Because men think that nothing's ever happened to the women in their family, and the women in their family are long and strong, and they're the best of the best, right? But I implore you to sit with your mom or your sister or your niece or your daughter and say, hey, just for shits and giggles, ever in your life have you been in a situation with a man where you felt unsafe? Just use the word unsafe. Hey,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious, such and such. Have you
Yeah.
ever in your life asked your mother, your grandmother, your sister, whatever female is available to you and your family, just sit down, casual conversation, right? And say, have you ever in your life felt unsafe in the presence of a man? Can you explain that to me? And you will be shocked at the stories that you hear from your female relatives and friends, because it happens more often than not. I promise you, ask that question. It happens more
Well,
often than not.
honestly, to your point, I honestly wouldn't be surprised, only because of what I've seen. I have two sisters and a mom, and I've seen what has gone down. So I wouldn't be surprised. But however, in terms of the context about what we're talking about with the Me Too system and how that plays into it, I would have to say, as far as the context with what you're talking about, not so much, even though, yeah, it does play a part of it. But here's another point of view, okay, to add to that is, so just like you were talking about with the celebrities, athletes, yada 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 yada, yada, right? And even with Kobe, okay? So how do you speak to the women who, let's just say, same scenario that I just drew, right? And they decide that, it's 7 years, 7 years after the fact. And let's just say, for argument's sake, the statute of limitation is 6 years. But at the seventh year, because that athlete is about to be getting some sort of accolade or whatever, and they decide, hey, I'm going to take you down because you don't deserve it because you did this to me. How do you speak to something like that?
Okay. Well, first, I'm anti statute of limitations for
Wait,
sexual assault.
and maybe this might be a good segue into the next the topic that involves that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm anti statute of limitations, right? I think that there is no, when you've violated somebody, you
Yes.
don't get to put a timer on them of when they're gonna come out or whatever. You just don't know what's gonna trigger somebody to finally give them the strength to say, hey, this happened to me and you did it, and now you're going on with your life like nothing happened. You just don't know when you violate somebody, right? With that said, there still has to be a certain amount of education, like I said, because I don't think a lot of men realize what sexual harassment is, what sexual assault is, and it's different for everybody, right? Unfortunately, it's different for everybody. This girl may be like, hey, okay. This girl may be like, don't do that. That's too much, right?
Right.
So there's still a process of educating each other without, knocking heads, right? Again, there's a thin line with what you think, hey, I didn't touch her that bad and he sexually assaulted me, right? So I'm anti statute of limitations. I
Okay, so
don't.
question.
Mhm.
Where do you draw the line with, you should have said something at the time that it's happening, versus with what you're saying, you're anti that, let's just say it's 20 years after the fact? Like, is 20 years after the fact, is that, even uh plausible to say something at that point? Does it have any, does it hold any value at that point? What's your take?
Okay. Well, we can, let's just, since we're doing hypotheticals,
Right.
let's say that, uh, you know, Universe forbid one of your favorite relatives was stabbed to death in 1973. Let's just put that out there. Brutally murdered, 1973. In the year 2010, you see this person on TV. They never got caught before. Whatever, they're on TV now. They just hit the lotto. They like, woo woo, they hit the lotto. And you're like, you're the person that stabbed my loved one to death. Right. Are you gonna put that same thing on them? Hey, it's been 20-something years. There's no point in me throwing him in prison now. My relative was stabbed to death 20-something years ago. How would you answer that?
Well, my answer to this is, first of all, remember, with any crime, it's all about the burden of proof. First and foremost, right? Without burden of proof, you have no case.
Okay, with that said, unfortunately, sexual assault and harassment you can't put that under burden of proof, right? Because there's only
that's how the laws work, huh? You know what I mean?
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying it's not that cut and dry because DNA dries up. People take showers. Exactly. It's not that cut and dry. It's not video. Exactly. It's not video surveillance, right? Exactly. So it's not the same as a murder being caught on video, right? So it's a little more complicated when it comes to sexual assault.
And let me add something to that.
And I want to jump in when I get a chance here, since we're talking about it. I might as well.
I got Patrice back.
I just want to add something really quick before I lose that point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Remember, hearsay when it comes to certain cases is a wash. It's all about, okay, can you prove within the laws and within certain things that will allow, yes, this will say your case is valid, because if it's not within those parameters, your case is lost.
Well, that's why we have juries, right?
Well, see, here's the thing with juries is that it's basically like saying you're taking a chance, because it's their judgment to figure out in their minds, okay, are you innocent or are you guilty? And depending on how well the argument is between the defense and the prosecution will determine how influential they can be towards the jury.
Okay, so Frank wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I do, but I have a lot on it. I don't know whether you want to bring Patrice up to talk about this, because this issue now has shifted to away from whether or not MeToo is necessary to talking about.
It's part of MeToo, believe it or not.
It is. What I'm saying is that this is a different topic. We're not talking about the importance of statute of limitations, and I definitely have a lot to talk about that. But you mentioned Patrice is in the back, so I don't. It's how you want to do it.
Yeah, let's bring Patrice up because she's been waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Hey.
How's everyone? So the Me Too movement for me, I think, is totally necessary and is long overdue. And I'm glad that a movement has come to the forefront, because these things have been going on for centuries. Women have been suffering in silence. And I agree with Jen on the statistics that it is more women that is truth to the matter of the assault, the violation, than not. Of course, we should pay attention to the ones that are falsely accused. Absolutely. Those cases absolutely need to be brought to the forefront as well. But there has been a good old boys mentality of boys will be boys that has caused women a lot of pain and suffering over the years. And the thing about any type of violation or assault is that woman usually is never the same again. It usually carries her and lasts the rest of her entire life. If you talk to any woman, any relative, any close friend that that may have, there is a change in her that she will never be the same again. When it comes to things like the statute of limitations. There's no statute of limitations on murder. It's the law is gray, right? There's statute of limitations on the rape and the R word and the assault and the violation per state, depending on the state. And I think it is a little. I don't agree with that. I believe it shouldn't be a statute of limitations, because the same law that applies to murder in the word should apply to the R word as it does in the word. When I say the Bible, it all means in the Bible, when they did that, they lost their life. Period, point blank. When that happened.
Okay, and she's respecting the clock. That's why she stopped.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Patrice. Frank, do you want to jump in on everything you want to say?
Yeah, I got a lot here. I'm trying to go fast.
I know, and I see the clock, and I wanted to end on the future of, but please, I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, so it depends on where I want to work with you and where you want to take it, because I'm going to be mostly talking about this statute of limitations.
Okay, go on.
Okay, all right, cool. Now, I'm going to try to go a little slow because I tend to make a lot of points, and I need everybody to track with me on this. All right, so number one, statute of limitations. I was reading that once we got there, we are now talking about something that is really important. First, we have to go into why is there a statute of limitations? And one point was mentioned. That point being that when of any crime, when someone is making an accusation, you have to be able to prove it in a court of law. And so you do have a burden of proof, and that is fundamental, as we all know, to our system of justice. You are simply not allowed to accuse people in this country anyway, and not carry with it a burden of proof. It's clearly why, we are innocent until presumed innocent until proven guilty. You can't prove it without evidence. And so the statute of limitations has the effect of making sure that there is a time limit, because over time, the presence of evidence, whatever it is, fades, no matter what the crime is. So that's one very important reason for having a statute of limitations in the first place. The other reason that's also important is to keep the threat of litigation from being something that can be held over someone's head into perpetuity. You don't want someone having, you don't want, even, let's say if it is true or even if it's not, someone to be able to simply say, well, do this extortion style, do this or I'm going to sue you, do this or I'm going to end forever on some perceived crime, be it something that happened on an individual basis or something like a prosecutor, on the state system, who will say, hey, I've got forever to prosecute you. But that's a slightly different point, and that's really the weaker of the 2 points. But the point is, for me, you do have reasons for the statute of limitations. What was brought up was the most extreme case for statute of limitations, which is murder. I disagree with Jen when Jen says that murder is more heinous than the R word. That the R word, is more heinous than murder. I think murder is the highest, most felonious crime that can be perpetrated from one person to another. I don't necessarily know if it should be something that, you don't want to split hairs, but when you take someone's life, they are gone. They are gone. You have ended someone's life. And while the R word is absolutely heinous, I don't think that it doesn't top murder. But as the FBI says, and I agree, it's the next most heinous thing. And they both are horrible. So I don't think that you can compare, when you talk about statute of limitations, just because murder, there's no statute of limitations for that, doesn't mean automatically that there shouldn't be a statute of limitations for, something else.
Something that's not as serious to you, because rape's not as serious. I'm sorry, the R word is not as serious as murder to you. So you're like, hey, statute of limitations on that, but not this, because murder is worse.
Correct. Now, this is what I'm getting to. Just because I say there should not be a statute of limitations does not mean that once we establish a statute of limitations in my world, that it should be something that, I'm not saying that the statute of limitations should be a year, 2 years. It should be a really long time because it reflects the heinous nature of the R word. So be that maybe 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, 10 years. I mean, many states have it at 10 years. For example, I live in Florida. In Florida, 10 years is the statute of limitations for the R word. And it doesn't have to stop there. This is something that needs critical thought. What happens if the R word happens to a minor? Should it be different at that point? Are there other things that should come into play when you consider a statute of limitations? But what cannot happen, what absolutely cannot happen, is that you have no statute of limitations and you have someone 30, 35 years later accusing someone else of the R word with, at that point, no ability to prove it according to the standards of law that we have. And in this society, in this country that we live in, just the accusation is enough to destroy somebody. And so when you put it in those situations, you have a woman with the ability to, there's a back and forth, for whatever reason. There's all kinds of reasons why people do things to each other, can actually accuse someone like that, have it be taken seriously when there's absolutely no merit to the case. It's unreasonable. It shouldn't be that way. So statute of limitations, that's what's going on here. There's a reason for it, and we need to think about it. When it comes to the R word, I personally believe that there should be one because it opens up too much possibility for serious, severe harm to someone who's falsely accused. What that should be, that's a conversation that needs to be worked out.
Can I rebut?
Yeah, please, Patrice, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I want to say I agree with you on that part, Frank. I didn't mean to say it in a general way, because you're right. If it's a case where from 10, 20, 30 years ago and there's no evidence and the statute of limitation is up, you just can't do anything about that. But if there is evidence on it, and as our science and DNA technology and things of that nature progress, and then now DNA pinpoints that this person actually did this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, then what do you do with that? So, but to say, and Jen, I tell you, I never thought about your perspective on the whole, murder per the R word, but wow, you made my wheels turn, because now you're a man of faith, Frank, and in the Bible, both of those crimes committed was a death sentence. If the man gets caught in the act or there's proof or evidence of that R word, he was put to death. You know that, right?
I don't know that. So that's something that you're going to have to let me know about, because I don't recall in the Bible that being the case.
Yes, it is, I believe, in the Old Testament, but I haven't read the Bible in a while, but I do remember that. But,
go ahead.
Just like in there, they talked about these people that stole something, they cut their hands off. It's in there. So, okay, so let's take a look at murder, because Jen gave me an idea. Mm-hmm. I understand what you're saying about murder, but there is circumstances around even murdering someone, right? Because you can kill someone and murder someone in self-defense. That's a whole different form of murder. Right. So that word in and of itself kind of, so Jen, you gave me something to think about. I kind of agree with your point of view on that.
Let me say one quick thing, Jen, because I know you're ready to jump in. So what we're talking about is the accusation here. When we talk about what's going on, we're not talking about, let's try to take out whether or not the crime was actually committed, because what's happening is the concern that people have is about being falsely accused. So when you bring up an accusation, there should be along with that accusation, the ability to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, that's our standard, that it is actually true. Statute of limitations addresses that. The reason why there's no statute of limitations for murder is because murder is so heinous that you don't want there to be a situation where if proof does become available 40 years, 50 years down the line, which has actually happened. Some people have actually come in the case of, as we know, high profile race-related hate crimes, murders, where proof does surface many years later, that person is no longer here. So it seems just in a very common sense kind of way that the person, even 50 years later, if they're still alive, should be able to pay for taking someone else's life. It's not quite the same thing with the R word. And there's, so it's a little bit more complex. So, right, somebody brought up Emmett Till. So I know I'm talking more than I wanted to. I'll go ahead and throw it in. I just wanted to bring that up. We're talking about the accusation.
Okay.
Can I just jump in on
how can you separate the accusation from it actually happening? You have to say that someone did it, and that's considered an accusation, right?
Correct. You have to accuse someone. Correct. But there's what you have to ascertain the truth of the accusation.
Okay, so you're talking about false accusations?
I'm talking about accusations, whether we have to ascertain whether or not an accusation is true or false.
Okay.
So I'm not or the other.
Okay, so I want to say this to your point. Here's the problem with in my point of view, I'm a woman. I think the R word is worse than murder. Your point of view, murder is worse, but you're not a woman, right? You're not thinking one day I can be walking down the block and some dude is going to stick his penis in me and ruin my life. That's not a thought that you've ever.
No, you're presuming that men can't be R word.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you individually have never woken up on any given day and thought to yourself, and I'm sure a lot of men on the panel have never thought to themselves, I could possibly go outside today and someone can penetrate me with their penis by force. It's not even a thought.
I can give you that.
It's not even an inkling. It's like, what?
Right. I can give you that.
How can someone that has never in their entire life, and I mean ever in their entire life, considered that possibility, say that murder is worse? That is why you can say that murder is worse, because the idea of that happening to your being isn't even a possibility. Another problem is that the FBI said that murder is more heinous, right? Who's making the laws? Who at the FBI said that? Did they sit in a room with 10 women or 10 men? Or did, again, like the old boys club sat down and said, what's more heinous, guys, rape or murder? Hey, we can get murdered, we can't get raped. Murder it is. So it's still biased. It's still biased. Now, if you tell me the FBI sat with 10 women and 10 men and then murder came out on top, then I would give you, I'd give you a pass for that. But when men who have never in their life considered a strange penis, penetrating their body in the middle of the night in some alley, I can't take you seriously when you tell me, hey, murder's worse than rape. When you say someone falsely accused, their life is ruined. So is someone that was R'd forever. They are a changed human
if
being.
it happened.
Right. And more than likely, statistically, it happened.
Right.
That's the problem. And by a landslide in comparison to false accusations. Like, more than likely, it happened because we're talking about so many reports that haven't even been made.
What you're trying to say, though, is that men can't. Real quick, and I'll make this super quick, real quick. What you're trying to say, though, is that men can't possibly understand what the R word is like, and that's, I think, just because we're not women. That's what you're saying. How, as a man, how can you even make the comparison? Because it's not something that's in your everyday. You don't have to wake up thinking about or worrying about if that happens to you. Number one, I mean, men can be R worded by other men, and it's happened, as well as by women as well. Actually, that's happened with the right dynamic. So I don't think that it's a requirement that you have to be a woman to be able to judge whether or not murder is worse or better than the R word.
Yeah, no, I let me interject, because I absolutely agree. I don't want to do the thing where you're not a woman, you don't know. And I don't like when men say you're not a man, you don't know. We've been relating to each other since birth, right? If you're heterosexual, all that's ever been in your world is the opposite gender. So that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I just asked you, Frank. I just asked you, and you said to me, you've never thought about it. You said that to me.
Right. And in terms of it happening to me, I've never walked out and said, "Oh yeah, one day I'm scared of being R-worded."
Right. So that's my point. Not that it can't happen to men, but men would literally have to be in prison to worry about getting R'd. All women have to do is wake up.
Worry. But this isn't about having to worry about getting R'd. This is about conceptualizing and trying to understand and placing in its proper perspective what the effect of being R-worded is versus the effect of being murdered is, and making a comparison.
But if I may interject, Frank, when a woman is the R word, in her spirit, she has been murdered. She has been violated. She has been murdered.
But she can come back for that, though.
In
That's
her spirit. No, listen.
Mm-hmm.
They never be the same again, Frank. And if you I know of so many women that cannot deal with the fact that they have been that. They become alcoholics, they become drug addicts, they become prostitutes, and then people wonder what led them down that road.
Right.
It's because they never got over it. They never get over it.
Listen, on the flip side, there are women who have been R-worded, who have come back to become positive, normal, functioning members of society. It doesn't destroy them. It's not a death sentence in the same way that being murdered is. Yes, it does happen, but and it does. It's horrible. It's the next thing on the list. But you can, with proper everything, rehabilitation, go through and years and years and years of it. I'm not saying it's easy until the next day you're going to be all right, but you can come back from it. You can live a life. You're not dead when you are R-worded. You're no longer a part of society when you're R-worded. So let's not somehow pretend that if you are man or woman R-worded, that has now destroyed you. You're done. There's no reason for you to be here anymore. And we're going to do it and we're going to look at it at exactly the same way as when somebody is actually, their life has been taken and removed from this earth. That's not the same thing.
I understand that, but believe me, that woman that has come back, that have been to therapy, that have been an advocate, believe me, she will still tell you her life has never been the same.
But she will not tell you that her life is gone.
No, she will not. You're correct.
Yeah, but Frank,
that's the point.
I'm sorry.
We're getting trying to say is nutty.
This is passion. This is about this.
But I'm like, we all talk at the same time. Nobody cares. Okay, Frank, I think you are running off on a tangent, and it sounds nuts. Okay,
what's the tangent?
You can't say, well, she could never tell you that her life is over. Her life is ruined forever. She has to learn now to live as a sexually assaulted.
She has to live with an assault, but her life is not ruined forever.
Daily activity, like
okay.
Have you ever heard of people?
And that's her. You're right, but that is short of murder.
Men go to jail for the R word for a couple years, and they come out and they go on about their business.
Irrelevant.
Irrelevant. Was falsely Central Park 5. You know what I mean? They were falsely accused. Look at them now. They're out now and they're millionaires.
Irrelevant. Completely different issue. You want to bring it up, but that's not. You can't conflate the two issues. We're talking about the reason why I'm talking about this is because we are trying to conflate whether or not the statute of limitations applies to murder in the same way that we do towards the R word.
Let's take murder off the table. You're talking about somebody being violated and then moving on, right? A false accusation is a violation to your life. An R is a violation to your life, right? So Central Park 5, they were accused of R-ing a woman. They did 8 years in prison. Now they're millionaires. They're chilling. They're moving on. So you're saying that it doesn't matter how much time they did. Look at them. They're fine. They're functioning members of society. So whatever. Let's move on. Who cares? Those kids did 8 years at the age of 15. Who cares? It's the
I'm
same.
not saying that. No, it's not the same
No,
thing.
I don't think
I didn't
he's
say
saying
that.
who cares.
Nobody's
No,
saying that.
no, Jen. I don't think I don't think that's where he's going with it. If I'm reading this correctly, I think what he's trying to say more or less is yes, we hear what you're saying in terms of it does affect women the same way, as someone being murdered. The only difference is this, okay? And let me draw let me draw it this way. It's like with George Floyd, right? George Floyd was murdered. He is dead. So that means George Floyd at this point cannot live to tell the story. He's not physically here, right?
Right.
If you've been sexually assaulted, and I'm not going to use the word R word, I'm just going to say sexually assaulted, which is a safe word. If you've been sexually assaulted, right, the murder that you're talking about is mental, and we get it. But as far as physical and mental, I think that's the distinction we need to make here, okay? Because it's one thing to live to tell the story, and you could be affected, and your life is not the same. But the point is, you still can go on and tell the story. You still can tell people about it. But
You still help
if
people.
you're not
And I,
physically here,
and I still
you
say
know,
That's a good point.
and I still say that's a man's mind talking. I still say that's a man's mind talking.
Because you don't think men can be R-worded.
No, I
Well,
didn't say
so
that.
listen,
I didn't say that. I said
listen.
that they
The
can. I
Central
know
Park
men do it
Five.
Then why is it a man's mind talking? I don't get it.
because you
May I?
yourself. I just picked your mind, and you said I've never thought about being hard.
Right.
Well, I just thought about it. If I may
Men can be
interject,
hard. You said
the
men
one of
can be hard, but you said men can be hard, but then you also said I've never thought about being hard.
Correct, because it's not likely, but it is possible. Come on.
Right.
Let's not be intellectually disingenuous. It's not
Don't start talking like that fool up here, please.
that's what's happening, because we need to recognize the difference between whether or not something's possible and whether or not it's likely. The
Okay,
reason why men don't go around talking about that is because it's not likely, but it is possible.
but how many times have I said that men can be hard? How many times have I said that? I think
But you're not acknowledging that when you say that men can't think about the consequences of it. You're saying that only women have the sort of moral authority or intellectual authority to comment on the impact of rape, and that's not of the R word, and that's not true.
Well, it's kind of like if someone told you, right, what would the impact be of having your penis cut off?
Right.
That's like everything to every man, right? It's like, hey, my penis, I need it working, I need it, blah blah, right?
Right.
How would I sound if I told you? I know what that's like. I know what it would feel like to get your penis cut off. I know what that would be like. Wouldn't you look at me like you don't even have a penis? So how can you think about having one cut off?
Right. But you can't conceptualize genital mutilation. You can conceptualize that.
Guys,
But it doesn't mean you can't show empathy.
Right.
I
And
can.
you
And I
can.
do.
Right. Exactly. So you can conceptualize it.
But I cannot say that this thing that would happen to you is less than something that would happen to me.
Yes, you can say that.
Just because I'm a woman, right?
You can. It's just like saying comparing genital mutilation. As you know, in certain parts of the world, it's common practice to cut off the equivalent on the female.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
That's common practice, and we know that's just as horrible. You can conceive of it. All right. You can't say I can't even say what it's like, because it's never been done to me. I'm only conceiving of it in the same way that you are. And I don't know, maybe you're speaking from someone who has been R-worded. I don't know. But not every woman has. And if you haven't, then even you as a woman, you can have fears that it might happen, but you don't know what it's like until it actually happens to you, in the same way that I don't know.
No, now you're conflating. Now you're conflating, because it's something that women think about every single day.
But they don't experience it every day.
It's a thought all the time. And
the thought is the experience.
Wait a minute. Yes.
The thought is the experience.
I am telling you as a woman, right? It can happen randomly. Oh, it's 8 o'clock. It's dark outside.
You're
It's
saying
not,
the thought is the same thing as the experience right now.
say
That's
again.
what you're saying.
Let me hear the question so I can answer.
The thought, I'm asking you, the thought of it possibly happening to you, you're saying that is the same thing as it actually happening to you.
No, I didn't say that. We're not.
Okay.
Let's be intellectually honest.
Okay.
Right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it is a daily occurrence. So it's going to be more serious to us than a pile of men in an FBI room. That's what I'm saying. A pile of men in an FBI room cannot relate to thinking about it continuously. When you're outside, when you're going to get dressed, oh my God, I'm outside and it's dark now. Where did I park my car? I'm leaving the lobby at this time of night. Why is this guy walking behind me? Oh my God, this guy got in the elevator with me. It's midnight. What am I going to do? I'm not going to drink any more than this one drink because you never know. Let me not wear the skirt. That is a constant thing that women are going through. So when someone is going through that on a regular, a pile of men in an FBI room can't tell me that murder is more heinous. He just can't.
Okay. All right.
So let me ask you something, Jen, just on an objective point of view, right? So are you saying that somebody being murdered and being dead is less than someone who has been raped and they, obviously have the life in them to tell the story?
Yeah, that's just, she's been saying this the whole time. You asking the same question? Yeah, for her, the R word, she said it flat out. The R word is worse for her.
Yes, at the very least, I would concede to they're both as bad. Okay. But I will never concede to murder is worse because a bunch of men in an FBI room don't think so.
Don't even worry about it. Please take the FBI part out of it because that a little bit too much. Just go with what is kind of special. All right, get off the FBI right now. That's just something that's really irrelevant. If it doesn't make sense to you, then cool. But it makes common.
I don't care about the FBI. Sense. It's just about our conversation.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this makes common sense. Your life is taken away versus having to go through an extremely heinous experience. We don't want this to be the victim Olympics and the oppression Olympics and what's worse and worse. But when you talk about a hardcore issue like the statute of limitations, which is something that we have to live with in reality, then we have to make very sober considerations about whether or not it should apply. And there are some very legit reasons why it should not apply to something like murder, which is final. It's finite. A person's life has been taken from them and therefore calls for justice, as opposed to something where it's anything less than that, whatever it is. Okay, so they're different and they should be considered different. And
well, if we're not doing the Olympics at all, then right. You're still running track with murder is worse. So
as it relates to the statute of limitations, correct, I am. As it relates to the statute of limitations.
Okay, so we're not agreeing on this one.
Mm-mm.
It's not happening.
If I may interject.
Okay, Patrice.
I do see Jen's. What I said was she gave a light bulb went off in my head, and I understand her reasoning for feeling that way as a woman, because a lot of women that have been the R word, they wish they were dead. A lot of times, they self-medicate. That's why they self-medicate with alcohol and drugs, because a part of them do wish that they were dead. And speaking of the Central Park 5, I don't know if you guys saw the movie, the Ava DuVernay movie that she did on them. Yeah. One of those guys was the R word in prison. The one that was 16 years old that went to Rikers Island. He was R word. And if you saw him on Oprah Winfrey's show, when they all did the interview after the movie review came out and they were all talking, the one that had been R worded that went to Rikers, because the other ones went to juvie first because they were all underage. The one that had been R'd in prison, he's so heavily medicated and so out of it mentally and psychologically because of what happened to him in prison. So even for men, and again, you could look at the rest of them and they talk about their experience. he can't even barely talk about his experience.
Mhm.
He's so heavily medicated because it psychologically and mentally affected him. His life, literally, even with being accused with that, going to prison, plus getting our word and all the money he end up winning, ain't gonna rectify what he's experiencing on the mental and the psychological level.
But
Agreed.
Patrice,
He was a zombie. He was a zombie up there.
Is he a zombie now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Zombie now with the whatever his settlement is.
Exactly.
What's his name?
You talking about
I can't.
Corey King
The
Wise?
one that played Corey, yeah.
Yeah, Corey. Yeah, but you know what, Patrice? According to the fellas here, he's still alive to talk about how horrible it was, so it's okay.
It's not okay. Don't do that.
Okay.
That's the intellectual dishonest part.
At least
you
he's
get a
alive
chance.
to be medicated.
And when you get a chance, pull up the Oprah Winfrey interview and you watch his demeanor, his body language. Watch, he doesn't speak hardly coherent. He is heavily, you could tell he is on some heavily medication to help him cope and deal with it. He is mental and psychologically damaged.
He's not a vegetable.
He's not
I'll tell you that. Like right now.
No, he's not a vegetable.
Okay, and he's far from a vegetable. In fact, what he's doing right now is he has taken his experience, which is horrible, and he's turned it into something that is a point of positive change, or at least working for it. I'm sitting here looking up the stuff that he's founded, that he's doing, the Innocence Project. I'm looking up some other things as well. It's not like he's using what happened to him and he's trying to make it into something that can help others. That's powerful.
And all that's good, Frank, but trust me, but the psychological and mental damage and the medication that man is on, even though he's doing all that great stuff, he has to go home and look at himself and what happened to him at the end of the day. And trust me, he will never be the same. That's the part of it. They can do all this great work, but I'm telling you, their lives are still affected by it.
So as far as you're concerned, he should be dead, right? Hold on, bro. I just want to answer.
No, I didn't say that.
Well,
I didn't say
we're
that.
talking about a comparison here, because maybe
if he was asked that question, he would maybe give a different answer.
You think he'd say he wishes he was dead right now?
I believe he may say it was times he probably wished he was, right? Especially when he was in prison getting hard.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But now, here and now, I don't think he'd say that, right now I wish I was dead. I think he would be thankful for the life that he has, and you appreciate the fact that he's alive. And that by itself is one notion that, at least if you want to compare these two, that both are horrible, but that murder is worse.
In your opinion?
All this is my opinion.
Yes.
In your opinion.
Yes. But I do believe that the trauma, the psychological and mental damage of it is a part of killing someone in that sense.
Vaughn right now, we should bring Vaughn up, or at least read his comment. We dealing with somebody in the chat who has gone through this, and look what he has to say about it.
Okay, hold on. I'll drop the link right now.
I find this very interesting because...
One second. I'm sorry, Mike. One second. I just want to let you guys know we did go over the hour, and I do want to wrap with what does the future for men and women hold with Me Too in place? What does the future hold? So please finish your thoughts, but just know I want to finish with what does the future hold? Now that we got all our feelings out about should Me Too exist at all, what does the future hold? Go ahead, Mike.
To answer that question, I go back to point number one. Me Too needs to be revised so that it's fair on both ends and it's not unbalanced. That's my answer to that.
Okay. That's interesting. Patrice, do you have something on what does the future hold for men and women with Me Too in place?
I basically just hoping that some happy medium between men and women, and that unbalance of the tip of that scale is not as skewed for women as it has been, and that we would like to seek out more support from men, to actually believe instead of sugarcoat or cover up or sweep under the rug and things like that has been going on for like centuries because of the good old boys gang and because of boys will be boys mentality. I think that men need to look at it more from that perspective, especially men that have daughters, sisters, mothers, aunts, nieces, and things of that nature. And I believe that more support from the women need to be given for the whatever the majority of the number it is for men that has been violated in that sense as well.
I totally agree with that. We have Vaughn on the panel now, and Vaughn, welcome. You have a story for us.
Oh, yes. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay, yes. Yeah, I'm listening to you all go back and forth about which thing is worse or which thing is more important, and I see the clock, so let me hurry up. I think both of them are heinous crimes, but when you're dead, you can't come back from something. I was violated in my youth when I was a young boy. And to this day, I'm 58 years old. It does affect me. It still bothers me that happened to me, but I had to move on with my life. I have a wife, my son, he's 16 years old. I have a job that I maintain, and I have to be mentally able to function and do things. Now, say that the person that assaulted me or violated me had killed me. I would not even be here today to have the beauty of witnessing my wife and my son flirt. Do you know what I'm saying? So, in no way at all am I trying to downplay a woman being violated, because it is a terrible thing for anybody to put their hands on you without your permission. It's horrible. So I don't want you to feel like the men are trying to downplay what has happened to some of the women. But and just like Frank said, some of these women have had to overcome, and they use the term being a survivor. If you're dead, you can't be a survivor. So, but at the same time, I will say, I believe that both crimes are just as heinous as the other one. Now, our judicial system looks at it upon it differently. And I know I have 12 seconds, and I'm doing pretty good now because I'm looking at the clock. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. If you have any questions, I'm here.
Okay, first, thank you for sharing that story. I know that's not a story that's easy to share. Thank you for sharing that. Frank, would you like to respond?
Yeah, no, hearing a personal testimony from someone who's gone through it, and that person being a man, I think gives us the opportunity to have some perspective about it. The perspective being that, number one, it's possible to have something like this happen to you and you still be able to come back from it. No one here, including Vaughn, is saying that is going to say that it was easy or that it's without its challenges. But just as he said, much more eloquently than I can ever tell it, he's here to be able to actually live a life with love, production, and he's here. The only reason why we're comparing this, the only reason why we're making this kind of comparison here is because the whole this thing with the statute of limitation that was brought up. Everybody knows and agrees that this is both are heinous. But if we're going to talk about the statute of limitations, we have to talk about if it's going to apply to certain situations. And so for me, this is just that opportunity to add some real life experience to really try to put the point out that they are different and that one is more serious than the other.
But I also want to stress that one was deemed serious by a group of government members. One was deemed more serious. You do understand that at the end of the day, it's still yet an opinion. One was deemed more serious, and then someone wrote it in a book, and then that went on and on and on and on. It was deemed. So you can't say factually it's more serious because I think it's serious, right? Just like I can't say factually the R word is more serious because I think it's serious. Someone deems it, but I think what men have on their side is that, again, men decided it was more serious, and then it's like it puts the battery in the back of other men and say, see, if they said it, then
I disagree.
Don't think about it. Why do you,
I disagree also because those same
you're
group of
both
men.
men.
Yeah, but check it out. Check it out. Just like you have your opinion, Jen, and just like everybody on the panel has their opinion, it doesn't mean a group of people that have their opinion unanimously, we're going to agree to it, right or wrong.
Well, wrong, because you guys are agreeing with someone who said it unanimously in a group.
That's what you think.
But I
That's
didn't say that.
That's
Didn't
your
you say
opinion.
that?
No.
Didn't you say on the list of crimes they deem that more serious? Didn't you say that?
Who are you talking to?
Frank. I'm sorry, Frank.
Oh no, I thought you were replying to his point. I said that yeah, one of the things, and it was something I mentioned in passing that I absolutely regret even saying it because I had no clue that you were going to hang on to the fact that a group of men made a decision. It has nothing to do with it. When you think logically about it, and that's what we're asking. We're not asking anybody here to somehow try to trace back to whether or not someone made a decision or not, because it's not about who made the decision. It's about logically thinking through whether or not the decision is right, or the opinion has merit.
So if a woman thinks that it's worse, she's not logical.
No. We're not bringing in the logic. The only reason I say that is because I'm going to say that you, Jen, are not logical. Not that the woman is not being logical with this right here, because you are bringing in other things that are irrelevant to the central point. You're trying to say that the only reason you said battery in the bag. The part of the reason why men are being so influenced about it, and part of why our opinion is so strong, is because other men long time ago said that established that that's the case. That's a logical fallacy. If we are, what really is logical is if you were to sit down and think about whether or not, just without bringing in any other outside opinions, whether or not something can be more serious because one is final and one is something that can never be come back from, and the other is, while heinous, is something that can be recovered from. That's the crux of the argument.
So let me challenge that.
It's being illogical, not all women, from my point of view, it's being illogical to look at this in terms of whether or not some irrelevant group of people a long time ago, be they men or women, put it out there.
Okay, let me challenge that. Let's be intellectually honest. It was men who decided it. Let's not pretend it wasn't. Let's not pretend that it was a long time ago. Tarana Burke today is fighting right now in Congress because if you're sexually assaulted or harassed, you need a cool down moment. That's a male decision. Men decided that, not women, men. So let's not pretend that men aren't still in Congress saying your sexual assault and your sexual harassment is not as important as me getting away with it. Those are facts. There is a law.
Yeah, the question is how relevant it is.
You have to cool down. Wait. Let's be intellectually honest. Men did decide. Men decided.
The question is how relevant that is.
I know, but about being illogical, many women, have fought to death to die rather than be raped. So let's not pretend that doesn't happen either. Women have fought to their deaths because they did not want to just lay there and say, hey, I'll survive this and I'll start a peer group tomorrow and everything's going to be fine. Women have died, missed rape, trying to prevent rape, Let's talk more about logic, illogical.
That's about relevance.
Wait a minute, because we're talking about what's logical and what's not.
Right. How logical is bringing arguments that are not relevant?
It's illogical to think that murder, is less of a big deal than the R word, right? It's illogical to think that, right? But
No.
there are times in our history where many people have committed suicide, okay, rather than go through pain and hardship and all kinds of things. Has that not happened in our history where people say, I'd rather be dead and take their own lives? That's how serious it is, okay? That's how serious it is. So we cannot say that it's illogical because many people have chosen death, okay, before pain. So we can't say it's not logical because
I can say that's an illogical choice.
History.
That's their choice. I can say that I believe that to be an illogical choice, and I can also say that I believe bringing in facts that are not relevant to the central question is not a logical way to proceed. I can say both of those things.
Okay, Frank. So Frank, you
respond real quick, Patrice. Let me respond real quick, Patrice. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that they're all opinions, but someone may say to you, I think it's illogical that you would live a certain type of life. You'd rather live in that certain type of life than choose death. Somebody may look at you and say that's illogical. I couldn't live like that.
Right. They'd have to present their reasons. There you go.
Okay, so Frank,
Patrice?
you're a Christian man. I'm going to reiterate this again. Do your research on what the R word, what was the penalty for the R word in the Bible, and it's equal to what
you're
murder is in the Bible.
Wait a minute.
You're making the argument when you say that you still have not shown, you haven't brought, the onus of proof is on you to then say this. Here it is. You told me to do my research.
Right. I admitted I hadn't read the Bible in a long time, but I knew it was in the Old Testament. So I know you are a Christian man.
Right.
Okay. So ponder this. Ponder this.
Right.
Ponder this. As a Christian man, if biblically it was equal, the R word was equal to murder, and the sentence was the same, what would your opinion be then?
I don't do theoretical questions like that. How about we just look up whether or not it was?
Can I answer that question? Can I answer it?
Sure.
Yes, please. I'm sorry. Okay. Yes, please.
Well, and I get what my sister is saying, and I respect everything she's saying, and I'm a Christian as well, and I study the Bible and all of that too. And yeah, the wages of sin is death, not just lying, murder, cheating. The wages of sin is death. But at the same time, this judicial, I can't even say it right, but this judicial system is not set up on a biblical standard. And so we still have to commit ourselves to the laws of this land, even though we may not agree with them. And yes, I agree with you that it is just as worse in the eyes of God. It is just as worse as murder. And I get it. But at the same time, we have division of church and state. And the land law, the law of the land, says this is how they deem it to be. And even the scriptures say that we need to abide by these laws of the land.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
So, but I think you guys are getting to the point to where you're not. We should be able to agree on this topic. It is all terrible. Right. The murder is bad, and being violated is just as bad.
Yes.
Do you see what I'm saying? And yes, no downplay the severity of it. And that's where the conversation is getting twisted to me. It's because, one person is saying, no, this is more severe. And another person is saying, no, this is more severe. In the eyes of God, and I am a Christian, I'm not perfect. But at the same time, he looks at all sin the same way. But we have to live by these laws down here. And unless we change these laws or figure out how to change some of these laws, then we have to abide by them, unfortunately.
Correct. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I think the bottom line is that we do agree that it's all equally or near equally bad, like in the same sense. But it's like you said, it's because the law of the land, we have to abide by that. That's different There's different scenarios. There's different statute of limitations. There's different laws that protect victims and the perpetrator. So I agree with what you're saying. I'm just saying that I understand Jen's point of view of it because I am a woman too. So I can relate to that point of view. And I'm saying that I can agree to Frank's point of view too.
Right.
We
and that's why I brought up the whole point of statute of limitations, because it does apply to what we're talking about. Because if there was no statute of limitations, then everything that we're saying right now, we would all amicably agree, okay? But the fact that there is statute of limitations, it does dictate how long, we get to say, something has happened, okay? And to your point, Vaughn, that's the very point I'm saying, that also that we have to abide to the laws of the land as best as we can. And as long as we do that and we understand that, which also falls in line with the statute of limitations, then we understand, okay, how we can win the case or how we can get away with a case. You see what I mean? So it depends on how it falls. Okay.
So that falls on the example of, like I said, what if someone was AR'd 10 years ago and 10 years ago we didn't have the DNA evidence that we did, and now we run that evidence back through the new innovative DNA systems that we have, and it finds out that man actually did that crime 10 years ago. So you think because it is the statute of limitation that person shouldn't pay for that crime?
No, I didn't say that. Here's what I said earlier.
Wouldn't that be burden of proof at that point?
Here's what I said earlier.
Burden of proof at that point?
Yeah.
But the burden of proof is in the DNA.
Yeah.
So modern technology was not as advanced as it is, say, 20 years ago, and now it is. Right. And we run that DNA through our new and improved, innovative, modern technology, and find out indeed that semen belonged to the man that woman 20 years ago. So because of the statute of limitations, he cannot be tried and convicted for that crime because the statute of limitations is up, even though he's guilty.
Right.
Do you agree with that?
The question that Patrice is asking is, what should the statute of limitations be? That's all she's asking here. Should it be 10 years? Should it be 15? Should it be 20? Should it be 25? That's to me where the question should be. The question needs to be off of whether or not there should be or shouldn't be, at least for me. So in your,
I believe if it's a burden of proof, I think that it shouldn't matter. If there is an actual burden of proof, I think it shouldn't matter. Like she said, 10 years ago, but we had the DNA, but now they're saying since it was 10 years ago, and the statute of limitation is passed, but we do have the actual DNA from the rape kit. I mean, from the R kit. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think
that's a different thing, man. What you're saying now then is a different way to create the law. That way being that listen to me. In this case, you cannot even make the accusation unless there is direct verifiable proof prior to making the accusation. And so that can be something that can actually be implemented in such a way where you do not have to have a statute of limitations. But the point is that there should be some type of rule involved to prevent people from making a false accusation.
I think that's, I agree with that. But I think that's unrealistic, because if you were AR'd 10 years ago or sexually assaulted 10 years ago, I mean, unless you packed his semen in, a little box or whatever, when you say there has to be proof, the burden of proof is on you, and all you have is your word. You can't just throw that person out of the courtroom. You didn't save his semen, get out of here. So it's more complicated, in my opinion, when you're talking about being art or you're talking about sexual assault. It's not that cut and dry. Oh, you didn't save a semen? Oh, well, we can't help you. It's not that cut and dry.
Okay, so now you were saying
I'm sorry.
what you're saying here, so we're clear.
Evidence. But
What
that
you're
doesn't
saying
mean that violated.
Patrice's theoretical that she just brought up is not realistic. That's what you're saying. Because Patrice is the one who gave us the theoretical that 10, 15 years later, now that we have better technology, we actually can detect semen that was not detectable because we didn't have the technology. And so now what do we do? Right now, what you're saying is it's way more complicated than that. That's not going to happen. So what are we even talking about?
It's more complicated than that, because I'm not disagreeing with Patrice, because there may be some cases like that where it's like, now we can test the DNA. But there are also cases where the woman didn't keep the semen and jumped in the shower. Right.
We're not talking about those. We're not talking about those. We're talking about that particular argument. Okay, so let's not obfuscate the argument by saying, well, yeah, maybe 1 or 2 that can happen, but hey, that's not really the most. What she's asking about is the specific case of whether or not that happens. And if you're saying that can happen, and even though it's rare, it can happen, then the answer to that is, in that case, we don't need a statute of limitations, because in that case, we have the evidence. So let's be clear-minded about how we present, how we're going here, because
Frank, I have a perfect case in point. I
don't think it's rare, though. I think 9 times out of 10, you're not going to have semen laying around from 10, 15 years.
Yes, but I have a perfect case in point, all right? A very famous case, okay, will prove exactly what I'm talking about and what you're talking about, Frank, okay? Look at the case with Clarence Thomas, okay? Same exact situation. Because Clarence Thomas was about to be elected, into the highest judicial system, okay? Here comes this woman saying, I got raped. And they're like, oh my God. Okay, sorry. She got sexually assaulted. Sorry. Anyways. So now, of course, the burden of proof is, for her to be able to say, okay, it's not just your word. You got to prove this. Okay?
Right.
So because she's coming out and saying this 20 years after the fact, and the statute of limitations that's in place that has said, okay, you have up until this amount of time to say something. Once you've passed this, your case is dead. It's shut. Okay? And because she figured she could have taken a chance, okay, and go up there and try the case and say, hey, this is what happened to me, she got creamed. She got creamed in that case. You see what I mean? Because the number one question they asked her was, why didn't you say something at the time?
So
what more excuses?
And with that happening, you still think that MeToo needs a revision to protect the men that are accused?
No, well,
what's your point?
No, but I said specifically.
Why you brought up all of that? Why you bring all of that?
On both ends.
What's your point?
Not just the men, it's women.
So you
because
just
remember, MeToo can apply to men or women. Right or wrong.
A lot of time just to tell us that it needs to be reviewed on both sides. We get that.
Okay, guys. So if I may, where's Vaughn? Okay, if I may, I'd really like to end on a positive note. This was a heated one, but it's called Objections. For a reason.
Right?
I agree.
Objections.
Yeah.
For a reason, and that is what we're here to do. So thank you for being patient and staying respectful, even though we're passionate. I would like to end on a high note. What does the future hold? I would like to start by saying, I don't want men falsely accused, and I don't want women violated. I'm a little extreme, more than most. So I say, if you're going to be alone with a woman anywhere at any time, have a body cam.
I,
Already witness with you. When we go to the women go to the GYN, there has to be a nurse in the room so nothing goes wrong. Okay, religious people when they do Bible study, there has to be a couple that comes along. Be careful out there, women. Same thing. Be careful. Don't put yourselves in dangerous situations. But for men and women, because I'm not just preaching to women. Don't put yourself in dangerous situations. The future of Me Too, it still needs to be in place. I disagree with Mike that we need to throw men in there because I think the society's built men having a Me Too. I think men already have a Me Too since the beginning of time. They make the laws, they make the bills, they have the Me Too, right? Women needed the Me Too. So I would like to hear from you guys on final words. Frank?
How do you want us to go? You want me to go next, or you want to?
No, with you, Frank. Mike?
Sure. My final thought is the same, that it needs to be a balance where if a woman says something, there should be something in place that should be able to protect, but at the same time, she also has to know that there are consequences um, when she doesn't act, okay, accordingly. But also, the same rule can apply to a guy if it so happens to a guy. But also, at the same time, I will say that if sexual assault happens, whether you're a guy, you're a woman, child, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to stand on this one thing. Please, everyone, report it ASAP. Do not wait. I don't care how much emotion you think about, oh, I don't want to say anything. No,
yeah.
the sooner you report it, the better your case is. Then you have a good fight. And on that note, I just want to say on behalf of Jen, please subscribe to Jen's channel. Definitely share this video with everybody. Give it a like and definitely comment. And let's get the algorithm going. And that's my final word. One love.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you. Thank you. Patrice?
I just want to say that I know that right now we live in a very, very sensitive world where everybody is easily offended. Everybody is so sensitive to things and subjects and things of that nature. So let's be mindful and respectful of each other's space, of each other's bodies. What may be considered not a big thing to you may be considered a big thing to that other person. So let's be mindful and respectful of that.
Thank you, Patrice.
Amen.
Very important words right there. Be mindful. It may not bother you, but it may bother them. Vaughn?
Yes. Well, I would like to say that you all definitely pulled the passion out of me with this conversation. I appreciate your channel, Jen. I appreciate you too, Brother Frank, and all the other panelists. I'm just I'm glad that the conversation, although passionate, was very still respectful. And when you have these type of conversations, sometimes they can get very, you can become very passionate about what you're saying. But I like the fact of how we did keep it respectful. And hopefully, as we continue to discuss these different types of matters, that we can continue to keep it respectful. I appreciate you all for allowing me the time to share a little bit about my story. And like I say, God is good. And
All the
that's pretty
time.
much
All the time.
That's pretty much it.
Thank you so much, Vaughn. Frank, do you want to take us out? Before Frank takes us out, guys, I wanted to say we're doing this again tomorrow. And I think tomorrow's going to be even a more heated situation. We are talking about the abortion laws. Yes.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, bring your water and your boxing gloves. Okay.
All right. Get your Bible, sister. Get your Bible.
Tomorrow's
Put your common sense.
So please join us mañana. We'd love to see your beautiful face again and your opinions. We love having you on. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget Objections. Please subscribe to my page and Frank's page, Talk with Frank Gooden, On the Block with Jen. We're going to keep bringing these objections to you, and we want you to bring your objections to us. Each one teach one. Frank, please take us out.
Well, I'll keep it real short. So I want to try to answer the question in as balanced way as I can. It says, what does the future hold for men and women with Me Too in place? So here's what I think the future holds. I think that because Me Too is now here, and it should be here, there's like now this kind of a line that has been established where where there's like a positive side of it and a negative side of it. I'll start with the negative. The negative side of it is part of what we've been talking about. We now have men who have aren't necessarily at all trying to be sexually inappropriate, have now kind of been placed in a position where they have to be extra careful. And that wasn't the case. And so, as I mentioned before, and I think it was supported by a couple people, that leaves room for that side of it to have to be matured. There should, I think, be a couple more things that kind of put safeguards in place to make sure that people who with bad intentions can't take advantage of the situation on that side of the Me Too space. On the other side, though, is the positive side. And the future holds on the positive side is that now men who either don't care, they have a cavalier attitude about their sexual inappropriateness or worse towards women, there's now a space where they can be held to account much easier than previous Me Too. So for those people, when we went through the whole Brett Kavanaugh thing, for example, there was this whole thing where he was, tried to wash it off his frat boy behavior and all that. That now, hey, it's kind of there's a stop to that, or at least there's a check for that now, where there wasn't one prior to Me Too. And certainly there's more of a chance for there to be justice for women who go through inappropriate behavior or worse at the hands of men. Whereas before, like Harvey Weinstein, prior to Me Too, he would have been off scot-free. After Me Too, it's another whole, situation. And that's appropriate, that's good, that's positive. So for me, the future is one where there's a line, it's kind of a thin line, it has some positives and negatives, and work to do on both sides. I feel like that's my take on that one.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you all so much for joining us on Objections. Join us tomorrow. Come, please object. Join the panel. We can't do this without you. Don't forget, subscribe, like, share. Tell your friends to come on in. Watch it with your friends. Your friends may want to object. All right, guys. So I see you tomorrow. Peace and love. Stay safe.
Spirited debate.
Bye.
Guys.
Salud.
Salud. Bye.